listening to Overwatch League Daily, your daily source for Overwatch League news, scores, and more. Here's your host, KickedTripod.
Good morning, Overwatch League fans, and welcome to Overwatch League Daily, your daily source for Overwatch League news, scores, and opinions. I am John KickedTripod Horstman, and here's your Overwatch League Daily episode for December 27th, 2017. On today's show, I'm joined by Freedo, an Overwatch YouTuber and Analyst for Your Overwatch, to discuss the dominance of Ryujehong on the Seoul Dynasty. When it comes to superstars in Overwatch, there are very few universally accepted names. One of those has to be Ryujehong of the Seoul Dynasty. Ryujehong has won 2 Apex seasons, 2 Overwatch World Cups, and has had multiple high finishes in major and premier tournaments. I've seen him flex to multiple heroes, not just his staple support heroes like Ana and Zenyatta, but other flex heroes like Bastion, Mei, Sombra, and one of the few brave souls to run Moira. There's no doubt his hero pool is deep, and his level of mastery on these heroes rivals just about any other player in the league. Today I'm joined by Freedo from Your Overwatch to discuss some of the finer points of what makes Ryujehong such a dominant force on the Seoul Dynasty. Let's discuss his hero pool first. Against the NYXL in the preseason, Ryujehong played Zenyatta, Bastion, Mei, Sombra, Moira, Mercy, and Ana. Many of his switches were reactive or proactive to the NYXL's composition. Can you put his hero pool into perspective for us?
The diversity of heroes we saw Ryujehong on in the preseason, I think, was indicative of what the Dynasty are looking to do with their roster, especially in comparison to the old Lunatic High days. Because although we have seen Ryujehong play a bunch of different heroes historically, really, Lunatic High was more known for refining a meta comp rather than innovating a lot of wonky strategies. But now, with all the tools that the new Dynasty roster has to work with, they're looking to perhaps be one of the most versatile teams in the league. And Ryujehong plays a big part in that, because he's so mechanically strong on so many different heroes. It's incredibly valuable to have a player who not only is a star in their given role, the one you can expect them on, but can sort of tech pick into these other strategies to really weight your team composition to force the enemy to react to it. And the great thing about that is, if for whatever reason that tech decision doesn't work out, Ryujehong can always just revert back to his normal tried and true heroes. Meaning that having a player like Ryujehong in that position gives you the best of both worlds. It allows you to try wonky strategies, but also has the fallback plan to be able to play meta standard as well.
It seems that Ryujehong is really reactive to the other team's compositions. Why do you think he's able to be so successful hero switching when other teams have been more reluctant to change their game plan?
The reason why Ryujehong can look so good on so many different heroes is the core skill set of what makes him a great player. His mechanical excellence is a bit of a given at this point. Just as a pure guess, I'm sure he slept more Genji blades than any other Ana player in the world, but that level of mechanical brilliance shows through on all the heroes he plays. Be it Zen Orbs, Mei Icicles, Soldier or Sombra tracking, he's mechanically great at executing the play, but what's even better is that he's really intuitive with his mid-fight repositioning. Whether he's going to go for a defensive spot or an aggressive play, his moment-to-moment movement through the fluidity of a fight is what makes him so impressive and so good on all these different heroes, because he seems to know how to find that opening, even if it's a bit of a risky one, and has the mechanics to pull it off, but at the same time has that defensive playbook as well, where he can just play keep away forever and get immense value on whatever hero he's playing. And it's this playstyle applied to all the heroes he brings to the table that makes him both fundamentally solid, but also a big playmaker when the time's right for it as well.
Looking back on the preseason, what were some specific moments where we saw Ryujehong turn the tide of the fight using some of those tools that you just mentioned?
I'm going to have to go with a tried and true Ryujehong Ana moment. It was against the Shanghai Dragons on the Streets phase of Dorado. Shanghai were looking to close out the point, and in classic Lunatic High fashion, they were streaming in to stall the payload. And in the course of about 3 seconds, Ryujehong makes a massive swing play that really, it was about a 3v4 retake, and Ryujehong comes in, anti-nades the enemy Mercy, Bunny cleans that up, then he pivots off into an off angle to the right side where that little doorway is, fights, keeps himself alive, hits some heal shots, the Tracer exposes herself, comes to duel him, he sleeps her, the brawl continues, anti-nade comes back, he lands that again, and before you know it, this disadvantaged situation Sol is on top of. These are the type of interactions in a mid-fight that Jaehong just shows time and time again. It's what defines him as the definitive support player in the world, and why you should be fearful if Ana ever becomes top of the support meta again, because nobody's better than Jaehong. I already think Sol is the best team, and I think that gap will just increase the more competitive that Ana becomes.
We saw NYXL and the Outlaws take maps against the Dynasty. How did they address Jaehong differently than in other maps and situations where the Dynasty would eventually win?
I think the thing with Junkertown is it's a new type of map almost, where the way the engagements work are on an entirely separate rule book to all the other maps that we know in Overwatch right now. And with that being the case, all the teams in the preseason really were trying really experimental stuff, taking the engagements in weird ways, seeing how far they can bend or break the Bastion strategies. And I think a lot of learning happened during the preseason, and I would expect Junkertown play in general to clean up quite significantly. I wouldn't put much of it down to Jaehong at all, because like for instance, they clearly had a set strat to engage onto the Bastion on the cart against Houston, where they sent in Jaehong on Ana to anti-nade him. And that part worked. The only problem was Houston was running single healer, putting Raucus on Roadhog. So when Sol used all their resources to pounce the Bastion, they kind of just brawled out the fight from there. They tried putting Jaehong on Sombra against NYXL, and then they didn't come out in the Bastion comp, making that decision look a little wonky. They tried Jaehong on Mei on attack, which looked pretty good, but perhaps even unnecessary, because they've also in other matches tried him on the Bastion with single heal as well. The comps were all over the place. And really where Sol either won those games or lost them was down to how they performed on the third stage, actually, defending or attacking. They won against the Outlaws by holding them there for like 5 minutes, even though they didn't finish the map themselves, and the NYXL had a stellar performance out of Pine on the Widowmaker, and I think Junkertown's a map where if your Widow goes off, you probably just win. So really, win or lose, I don't think Jaehong played a big factor either way. And it was more the result of the overall team performance or team composition of both teams working its way out.
If you were a coach preparing to go up against the Dynasty, what plans would you be putting in place to address Jaehong?
I think the problem is that you can't really isolate Jaehong from the rest of his team. Everybody is insane on that roster, which means trying to game plan just for Jaehong from the support slot doesn't really work. Individually, though, for the players that would probably come up to him in matchups like, let's say, your Tracer player trying to duel Jaehong on Zenyatta, I think what you have to keep in mind is that Jaehong is crafty. He will bait you into fights he wants you to go into because he has the mechanics to hit shots from any position, and he's comfortable weaving in and out of action-intense spots and then all of a sudden finding really defensively safe spots. So with that being the case, you can't really put an overemphasis on trying to find Jaehong when he's playing support, which is what I think that a team like, for instance, Kongdu Panthera learned way back in Apex, where Lunatic Kai was able to play a catch the dive style versus the over-aggressive tank play out of Kongdu Panthera, and the supports are just able to eat that up. Jaehong and the Dynasty in general is going to be quite good at catching over-aggression, so you have to play strategically sound and mechanically brilliant. Good luck. Probably the best hero to utilize against Jaehong and Sol is a Star Widowmaker, whether they're playing against Dia, Pine, or Linkser. When that Widowmaker's popping off, Sol look mortal, and Jaehong can't really do much about it from his position. Then you're putting the game a bit more into the DPS's hands, where even though they have a superstar player in Fleta and a lot of other strong DPS as well, even after those upgrades, Sol probably still is weaker in the DPS category. I say that, and then on Ruins, Fleta outduels Pine over and over again, meaning that that strategy has diminishing returns, even though it worked on Junkertown, but it's probably your best shot, at least in this meta currently.
I think you made a really interesting point about how Sol's dynamics for their team work and how they support each other. How does the playstyle of the Dynasty open up space for Jaehong?
I'm not so sure that's what they do now, but they definitely did that back in the old days, many patches ago. Think Zumba on the Zarya, Miro on Winston, and Jaehong on his patented Ana. This, of course, was prior to some Zarya nerfs as well as Ana nerfs, but that comp in specific really allowed for Miro to play incredibly aggressive. Because the ability, usage, and mechanics of both his Zarya and Ana player were so strong, Miro had the reach to be able to do incredible things and play in a way that other Winstons would just simply die. Now, I think it's important to look back to that era because recently, a bit in the preseason, but a bit more in the most recent season of Apex, Miro was kind of getting shredded. And I think that largely has to do with the amount of protection and support that he can get. Whereas right now, any tank you play, an aggressive move is incredibly all in. There's not a lot of resources that can bail you out anymore. And really, we're in a more of a defensive, poke-heavy meta. We're hitting critical range damage as well as winning through the Mercy attrition is the way to go. And what that really does is diminish the carry potential out of the tank and support core. However, of course, the range damage that Zenyatta brings, and Jaehong definitely brings to the table, is still really key. The only issue is, I don't think Jaehong is particularly effective at using really far-ranged alt-fire snipes, whereas other Zenyatas you see get those pickups, especially at the break of the fight, much more reliably, but I don't think that's necessarily a knock against Jaehong, because he's just so much better than most players in the mid-fight anyway, hitting his primary fire especially. So until there's a meta shift, actually, we're not going to see a lot of that extent of skill cap coming out of Jaehong, but even in a meta that probably doesn't fully suit their strengths, Seoul takes the engagements really intelligently to make sure that everyone is set up to do their job. I think especially Kuki really impressed, but of course the Miro and Zumba synergy is still there. The tank line really ebbs and flows with the team fight, allowing for Jaehong to find those spots in the fight and find safety. It isn't just his aptitude to be able to find those areas, they're also created for him by how everyone on the Dynasty decides to commit fully or disengage fully. They're a very synergistic team.
So last question then. In your mind, is Jaehong the best support in Overwatch League? Who, if anybody, do you think would challenge him?
I think it's a really hard argument to disagree with him being the best support in Overwatch League until we see another support make the same quantity of clutch play. We kind of have to give that crown to Jaehong. Now, there's a lot of games to be played and a long season ahead of us, so that potentially could be the case. We haven't even seen Boombox play, for instance, and he's a player that I think is probably more of a mechanical carry on Zen, a bit more than Jaehong even is. So at least for the duration of the Zen Mercy meta, there is openings, I think, for Jaehong to fall in the rankings, I guess. Unko's really mechanically scary as well, but even to that point, those are more Zen specialists. And I think anyone ranking best support players would have to add a bit of an asterisk when you're in a Zen-heavy meta. Instead, I might look more to a player like Shaz, who has a bigger hero pool and can look mechanically dominant on more heroes. I'm a big fan of Shaz's Sombra, but he's a player a bit like Jaehong, where he can look great on a lot of different heroes. The problem comes in that a lot of these other players are probably on mid-tier teams at best, so it's unfortunate for them that they're going to have less opportunities to really show what they're able to do, because oftentimes the support slot is going to struggle to rebound a fight that you're massively down in. I think their carry potential more comes from overcoming a fair fight or sort of closing the door and stomping out a win with like really good ultimate usage, for instance, to disallow the enemy to come back. It kind of depends, and it also depends the type of player that you want on your team. Jaehong steps into the playmaking category, which I think probably deserves its own explanation. If you're a bit too much of a playmaker, it probably means you're a bit of a risk taker inherently, because where plays get made are on the margins of acceptable play. So once in a while, you will see like an ult from Jaehong that probably was a bit too ambitious or looks a bit out of place. But for every one of those, there's a few more where like he nano boosts his Lucio to charge up sound barrier in time to stall out a fight or something. It kind of just goes with the territory. My actual answer I saved for last because I think low-key, the next best support to challenge him is on his own team. Toby does not get enough credit for how good at Ana he is. He has a little bit different of a style and a little bit less of that aggressive playmaking in him, and probably looks a bit more as a stable defensive playstyle like Chips Hyen on Dallas Fuel. But Toby's Lucio mechanics are incredible as well, and I think he's the best Lucio player. Now, he loses a few points because I I think he still finds some troublesome situations on Mercy, unfortunately, because Mercy inherently is like the opposite of his Lucio playstyle, where all her movement plays should be focused around defense. Toby wants to find those aggressive plays where he like duels a Tracer, for instance, on Lucio. But as soon as we start to leave the Mercy meta, I think Toby really starts to look competitive as one of the best supports in the world again as well.
So what do you think? Is Ryujehong the best support in Overwatch League? Will he continue to be going further? Let us know. On tomorrow's episode, I'll be joined by Overwatch caster and analyst Matt Pixie Carroll to preview the Seoul Dynasty versus the Dallas Fuel. Remember, you can find the show on any of your favorite podcast outlets, including iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Podcasts. We're on YouTube too. Click on the link in the show notes to find us. If you want to stay in touch, email me at overwatchleaguedaily@gmail.com, tweet me at OWL Daily Show, or join the Discord at discord.me/OWL Daily Show. That's going to do it for today. We'll be back tomorrow for another episode of Overwatch League Daily.